By this time several of the natives had come off to the ship in their canoes, and after heaving a few stones at us and having some conversation with Tupia, some of them ventured on board, where they made but a very short stay before they went into their canoes again, and soon after left us all together. I then went ashore in the bottom of the cove, accompanied by most of the gentlemen on board. We found a fine stream of excellent water, and as to wood, the land is here one entire forest. Having the seine with us, we made a few hauls, and caught 300 pounds weight of different sorts of fish, which were equally distributed to the ship's company. A.M. careened the ship, scrubbed and paid the larboard side. Several of the natives visited us this morning, and brought with them some stinking fish, which, however, I ordered to be brought up to encourage them in this kind of traffic. But trade at this time seemed not to be their object, but they were more inclinable to quarrel. And as the ship was upon the careen, I thought they might give us some trouble, and perhaps hurt some of our people that were in the boats alongside. For this reason I fired some small shot at one of the first offenders. This made them keep at a proper distance while they stayed, which was not long before they all went away. These people declared to us this morning that they never either saw or heard of a ship like ours being upon this coast before. From this it appears that they have no tradition among them of Tasman being here, for I believe Murderer's Bay, the place where he anchored, not to be far from this place. But this cannot be it from the latitude, for I find by an observation made this day at noon that we are at anchor in 41 degrees 5 minutes 32 seconds south, which is 15 miles to the southward of Murderer's Bay. Wednesday 17th. Light airs, calm and pleasant weather. P.M. righted the ship and got the other side ready for heeling out, and in the evening hauled the seine and caught a few fish. While this was doing, some of us went in the pinnace into another cove, not far from where the ship lays. In going thither, we met with a woman floating upon the water, who to all appearance had not been dead many days. Soon after we landed, we met with 2 or 3 of the natives, who not long before must have been regaling themselves upon human flesh, for I got from one of them the bone of the forearm of a man or woman, which was quite fresh, and the flesh had been but lately picked off, which they told us they had eaten. They gave us to understand that but a few days before they had taken, killed and eaten a boat's crew of their enemies or strangers, for I believe they look upon all strangers as enemies. From what we could learn, the woman we had seen floating upon the water was in this boat and had been drowned in the fray. There was not one of us that had the least doubt but what these people were cannibals. But the finding this bone with parts of the sinews fresh upon it was a stronger proof than any we had yet met with, and, in order to be fully satisfied of the truth of what they had told us, we told one of them that it was not the bone of a man, but that of a dog. But he, with great fervency, took hold of his forearm, and told us again that it was that bone. And to convince us that they had ate the flesh, he took hold of the flesh of his own arm with his teeth, and made signs of eating. A.M. careened, scrubbed, and paid the starboard side of the ship. While this was doing, some of the natives came alongside, seemingly only to look at us. There was a woman among them who had her arms, thighs, and legs cut in several places. This was done by way of mourning for her husband, who had very lately been killed and ate by some of their enemies, and pointed towards the place where it was done, which lay somewhere to the eastward. Mr. Banks got from one of them a bone of the forearm, much in the same state as the one before mentioned. And to show us that they eat the flesh, they bit and gnawed the bone, and drawed it through their mouths, and this in such a manner as plainly showed that the flesh to them was a dainty bit. Thursday 18th. Winds mostly from the southwest, a gentle breeze and clear settled weather. PM. Righted the ship and sent on shore all or most of our empty casks, and in the morning the coopers went about trimming them, and the carpenters went to work to caulk the sides and to repair other defects in the ship, while the seamen are employed in the hold, cutting wood, etc. I made a little excursion in the pinnace in order to take a view of the bay, accompanied by Mr. Banks and Dr. Solander. We met with nothing remarkable, as we were on the west side of the bay, where the land is so closely covered with wood that we could not penetrate into the country. Friday 19th. Winds and weather as yesterday, and the employment of the people the same. In the PM, some of our people found in the skirts of the wood 3 hip bones of men. They lay near to a hole or oven, that is, a place where the natives dressed their victuals. This circumstance, trifling as it is still a further proof that these people eat human flesh. In the AM, set up the forge to repair the braces of the tiller and such other ironwork as was wanting. The natives came alongside and sold us a quantity of large mackerel for nails, pieces of cloth and paper, and in this traffic they never once attempted to defraud us of any one thing, but dealt as fair as people could do. Saturday 20th. Winds southerly and fair, pleasant weather. Employed wooding, watering, etc., and in the AM sent part of the powder ashore to be aired. Some of the natives brought alongside, in one of their canoes, 4 of the heads of the men they had lately killed. Both the hairy scalps and skin of the faces were on. Mr. Banks bought one of the 4, but they would not part with any of the other on any account whatever. The one Mr. Banks got had received a blow on the temple that had broken the skull. This morning I set out in the pinnace, accompanied by Mr. Banks and Dr. Solander, in order to survey the west coast of the bay. We took our route towards the head of the bay, but it was near noon before we had got beyond the place we had been before. Sunday 21st. PM. A gentle breeze of wind southerly. The remainder light airs and calm, with clear settled weather. PM. The people employed as usual, and at 8 o'clock we returned on board the pinnace from surveying the bay, in the doing of which I met with an excellent harbour, but saw no inhabitants or any cultivated land. In the AM, after hauling the seine for fish, I gave everybody leave to go ashore at the watering place, to amuse themselves as they thought proper. Monday 22nd. PM and in the night had variable light airs and calms. AM had a fresh breeze southerly and cloudy weather. In the morning the people were set about the necessary business of the ship, and I set out in the pinnace, accompanied by Mr. Banks and Dr. Solander, with a view of examining the head of the inlet, but after rowing between 4 and 5 leagues up it, and finding no probability of reaching it or even seeing the end, the wind being against us, and the day already half spent, we landed at noon on the southeast side, in order to try to get upon one of the hills to view the inlet from thence. Tuesday 23rd. PM. Wind southerly, a fresh breeze. Agreeable to what is mentioned above, I took one hand with me and climbed up to the top of one of the hills. But when I came there, I was hindered from seeing up the inlet by higher hills, which I could not come at for impenetrable woods. But I was abundantly recompensed for the trouble I had in ascending the hill, for from it I saw what I took to be the eastern sea, and a strait or passage from it into the western sea, a little to the eastward of the entrance of the inlet in which we now lay with the ship. The mainland, which lies on the southeast side of this inlet, appeared to me to be a narrow ridge of very high hills, and to form a part of the southwest side of the strait. The land on the opposite side seemed to tend away east as far as the eye could see. To the southeast appeared an open sea, and this I took to be the eastern. I likewise saw some islands lying on the east side of the inlet, which before I had taken to be a part of the mainland. As soon as I had descended the hill and we had refreshed ourselves, we set out in order to return to the ship, and in our way passed through and examined the harbours, coves, etc., that lay behind the islands above mentioned. In this route we met with an old village, in which were a good many houses, but nobody had lived in them lately. We likewise saw another that was inhabited, but the day being so far spent that we had not time to go to it, but made the best of our way to the ship, which we reached between 8 and 9 o'clock. In the night had much rain with cloudy, hazy weather, which continued by intervals until noon. Wednesday, 24th. P.M. had a fresh breeze, southerly and cloudy weather. After dinner I employed myself in carrying on the survey of the place, and upon one of the islands where I landed were a number of houses but no inhabitants, neither had any been there lately. In the morning the gunner was sent ashore with the remainder of the powder to dry, and the longboat was sent with a gang of hands to one of the islands to cut grass for our sheep, and the rest of the people were employed about the usual work of the ship. This forenoon some of us visited the hipper, which is situated on the point of the island mentioned on our first arrival. The inhabitants of this place showed not the least dislike at our coming, but on the contrary, with a great deal of seeming good nature, showed us all over the place. We found among them some human bones, the flesh of which they told us they had ate. They likewise informed us that there was no passage into the sea through this inlet, as I had imagined there was, because above where I was in the boat it turned away to the westward. Leaving these people, we travelled to the other end of the island, and there took water and crossed over upon the main, where we met with several houses that were at present or had very lately been inhabited. But we saw but very few of the inhabitants, and these were in their boats fishing. After viewing this place, we returned on board to dinner. Thursday, 25th. Winds at northwest, a gentle breeze and fair weather. P.M. The longboat having returned with a load of grass, she was employed bringing on board wood and water, and the caulkers having finished caulking the ship's sides, they were paid with tar. Early in the a.m. the longboat was sent again for grass, and returned at noon with a load. Friday, 26th. Gentle breezes and pleasant weather. In the p.m. I made a little excursion in the pinnace along shore towards the mouth of the inlet, accompanied by Mr. Banks and Dr. Solander. We found in a small cove several of the natives, of whom we purchased a quantity of fresh fish, and upon our return to the ship found that the seine had been equally as successful, which we generally haul morning and evening, and seldom fail of getting fish sufficient for all hands. In the a.m. I made an excursion into one of the bays which lie on the east side of the inlet, accompanied by Mr. Banks and Dr. Solander. Upon our landing we ascended a very high hill, from which we had a full view of the passage I had before discovered, and the land on the opposite shore, which appeared to be about 4 leagues from us, but as it was hazy near the horizon, we could not see far to the southeast. However, I had now seen enough of this passage to convince me that there was the greatest probability in the world of its running into the eastern sea, as the distance of that sea from this place cannot exceed 20 leagues even to where we were. Upon this, I resolved, after putting to sea, to search this passage with the ship. We found on the top of the hill a parcel of loose stones, of which we built a pyramid, and left in it some musket balls, small shot, beads, and whatever we had about us that was likely to stand the test of time. After this, we descended the hill, and found, along with Tupia and the boat's crew, several of the natives, setting in the most free and friendly manner imaginable. Tupia always accompanies us in every excursion we make, and proves of infinite service. In our return to the ship, we visited the hipper we had seen on Tuesday last, which is situated on a small island, or rather a rock. The inhabitants of this place invited us ashore with their usual marks of friendship, and showed us all over the place, which indeed was soon done, for it was very small. Yet it contained a good number of people, and they had in it, split and hanging up to dry, a prodigious quantity of various sorts of small fish, a part of which they sold to us for such trifles as we had about us.